Hey guys, welcome to the Editing Bard, the channel that brings you writing tips that make sense. As you can see or may notice, there's something different, something unusual, something freaking awesome. Yes, I have a new background and I'm super excited about it. When I am sitting up a little bit more, it actually perfectly frames my beautiful bald head. And it looks like actually even right now, looks like I'm wearing a crown. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, awesome stuff. I know, I look super legit. So thank you guys for coming to the live stream. It feels like it's been forever, and there's been a lot that's happened since the last live stream that I had. So to kind of give you guys a quick rundown of everything, don't mind the smudge on my glasses. I am in the process of beta testing my online school for authors. So the Bard's Storytelling Academy is a couple of weeks away from its official launch. Right now, I am gathering beta testers. So if you are interested and would love to know how to start your fantasy story off and know or just get some behind the scenes and have it be for free before I actually launch the course, at which time it will have a price on it, then make sure that you either comment down below, or the most direct way would be to send me an email. You can do that through my website. The link is down below. Shoot me an email with your interest in doing that, and I will get you on board for the beta testing. I'm taking 30 beta testers. The first 10, and I have 7 spots left for this bonus. You will get to beta test every single course that I do until I stop doing them. So if you want free access for pretty much ever, then I highly recommend that you send me an email soon, because the spots are filling up quickly. The other thing is that I am actually expanding my coaching packages. So it's going to be much more involved, much more detailed. So when you do the mentorship with me, you're going to be getting a lot more in terms of value. You'll get more of my time, and you're just gonna get more, and everyone loves more, right? We like more. That's why we keep going to McDonald's and we like supersize me. We want more. So if you want more, follow the link down below to my website. Check it out, because I just posted the the new version of the website. I'm in like version 930 something. That tells you how many times I've redone the website since I started this whole freelancing process a year ago. 930 plus versions. Granted, some of that, there's not big changes. I've revamped it 5 times. This was just building up a web copy so it actually made sense. It was a little bit more interactive. Okay, that is pretty much everything. Nope, I lied. One last thing, I promise you, and then we're into the questions. I am doing consultations. So if you have a story and you either want to be mentored or want to find out some more about the Bard Storytelling Academy, or you have a book that's completed and you want to look at getting a developmental edit, you can now schedule a consultation with me through my website. Again, link will be down below. I think it's like the first or second link down there. I don't keep track of this stuff. I really should. But yeah, and you'll get the 3 free worksheets. So if you don't already have free worksheets, then you can get free worksheets. It's free. It's free, and you get 30 minutes to talk to me about your story. And so I think that's pretty awesome, pretty exciting. I'm super excited about it. That is everything that I have in terms of updates. I'll be keeping you posted more about the Bard's Storytelling Academy. But let's dive into the questions that we have for today. I went through, excuse me, and I was trying to find some really good ones. And for those of you who are new, chat is open. So if you have questions, I have stuff that I've prepared so that way you're not just sitting here staring at me for an hour. And so we have something to talk about. But if you have a specific question, maybe it's about your story, maybe it's about publishing, maybe it's about editing, feel free to use the comment box over there and let me know, and I will respond and answer those during the live stream. Okay, so first question is it better to just write anything when one is in a writing funk? So this is something that we hear a lot as authors. We get into a funk and we're just like, I don't know what I want to write. And some well-intentioned, usually very, very naive little author comes along and says, well, just write something. If I knew what I wanted to write, I'd be writing. The problem is I don't know what I want to write. So that helps me in no way at all. So what you want, we got to get out of this mindset of just write anything or just write, because it doesn't help. And this is for authors in general. And this goes like when I'm talking to somebody and they're like, I don't know what I want to write. I don't tell them just write something, because people have done that to me. Guess what? I didn't find it helpful. See, I have it in a new position. I have it off to the side so that way my face isn't covered half the live stream. It doesn't actually help me, and it doesn't help any other writer, because if it was just writing about anything, we'd do it. What you want to do is you want to ask questions. Ask them questions. If you're the person struggling with it, ask yourself questions. Ask yourself, what is it that I want to write? What is it that I enjoy writing? What is it that I would like to try to write? And as you do that, what you'll find is you'll get an answer to one of those. And it's so much easier when you have someone to bounce things around with, which is why a lot of my coaching clients, they end up coming to the conclusion themselves. I just sit there and ask questions. I'm basically a writing therapist. If there was a license for that, I would probably try and get it. But until then, I'm unofficially bard, mentor, editor, author, reader, therapist. And slayer of innocent characters. I have quite a long list of titles. But when you are bouncing feedback and getting feedback from people, that's usually the easiest to kind of break through that funk. Now, if you are in a place and you don't have somebody to talk to, writing prompts are a great way to start breaking out of that funk, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to focus on something different. It actually gives you something to work on. And if you're working on something, then you're not going to be worried about what you're not writing. It sounds convoluted, but our brains get so hung up on things at times that we need to do something completely different, something completely out of our comfort zone that actually frees up our brain to start thinking again about what it is that we want to write. So if you're stuck and you're being told to just write, ask yourself questions, find writing prompts, and try and get feedback from people. Just talk to other authors. Not just, don't talk to authors who are telling you, well, just write something. They're not going to be helpful. Find people who are willing to challenge you and who are willing to talk with you, talk through the story with you, because those are the ones that you really want to know and invest in, because they're going to be the ones that invest in you. The ones that are just telling you just write, they don't really give a crap. So don't talk to them. Don't focus on them. Don't respond to them in comments and forums. Just don't bother with them. They're basically a bump on the log. If you're that person, don't be that person. Be the other person that I talked about. All right. Going to move on to the next question here. We have, If you buy and read a friend's self-published novel and you enjoy the story but noticed misspelled words, should you say anything to the friend? If you are a bad friend, no, don't say anything. If you don't care about your friend, don't say anything at all. Just be like, yeah, that was so great. It was awesome. I totally didn't notice anything wrong with it at all. Yeah. Don't be that friend. If you want to be that friend, that's fine. But if you want to be a good friend, then you should absolutely tell them that, like, hey, and so you do the compliment sandwich. You go, wow, I loved this book. This book was so amazing and it drew me in. I did notice that there was in a couple places some misspelled words. So I just wanted to let you know about that since I noticed it. But seriously, like the characters, the plot, the story, all that kind of stuff. You see how you don't crush their dreams. Um, compliment sandwich is seriously the best way. I've had it used on me when people be like, "Yeah, Stephen, you've done this really well," and then you need a little bit of work here, but I mean overall you did really great. I do the same thing with my clients because it's a way to help one boost their confidence because you're telling them that they actually did really good, right? If they did a good job, even if it's super rough, if they did a good job, then tell them. If you notice something's wrong, then make sure that you point it out to them in a very loving way. Don't be like, oh my God, did you see this? It's gross. Don't do that. Don't be that person who just belittles people for the sake of belittling people, or tearing apart someone's work for the sake of being an editor. Don't do that. I don't do that. A good editor doesn't do that. They point out the issues and be like, hey, we need to fix these things overall, both on either end of this. This was great. So try and do that would be my recommendation, is find a way to comment on the good and also very lovingly and very gently point out what's wrong. Because honestly, there's going to be misspelled words. There's going to be typos. There's going to be sentences that just get missed. And this is after it's gone through probably several editors. Now, if it's self-published and they were just doing self-editing, it's likely that you'll find more of those, mainly because people aren't practiced at it. And you also get writing blindness, which is where you are so invested in the story, you've read it so many times that you don't actually see the issues anymore. You're too close. You're blinded by it. But even if you paid editors, developmental editors, copy editors, line editors, and then once all the editing was done, you went on to proofreading, and you had proofreaders go through it, and then you had betas go through it, there is still going to be a misspelled word or something amiss in the story. There just will be, and you have to accept that. There's a spectrum that there's, oh my gosh, it's self-published, which is where most people who have issues with indie authors, that is what they see most of the time, because you have, again, well-intentioned authors trying to get their stories out there into the world, and they're like, my first draft is fantastic, I'm just going to publish it. And it looks like a tornado of toddlers just went through and just messed up the words, and it's barely coherent. I've seen stories like that. That's why indie authors get a bad rap, is because people don't put their best book forward. They take the cheapy route and say, well, self-publishing is free. It is if you don't want to sell anything or you want to make yourself look like a dunce. On the other hand, you can have somebody who's, even publishers, traditional publishers, are going to go through this and they're going to find it. A good example is right there. installments, that one, is a copy of The Fellowship of the Ring. And in that, Gandalf is misspelled. I think I counted a total of like 2 or 3 times. It's spelled Gandalf. It's published. It's through the publisher. And they still missed it because our brains, if it's been spelled right, if it's been spelled correctly, every time up until that point, our brain immediately superimposes the correct word on it. That's what our brain does. It's how when you look at the jumble of words, as long as the first letter and the last letter are the same, you know exactly what word it is, even if everything in the middle is screwed up. That's how it works. So don't think that your book isn't going to have issues. But if you're a friend who is reading a friend's book, self-published or traditionally published, I don't care what publish it is, if you notice something, take it to them and let them know and be like, hey, this was super great. By the way, you have there were some misspellings here, and mark down where they were, right? So you can actually tell them like, well, it was somewhere in the book. Don't do that. Point out where it is in the book so they know how to fix it, because then if it's traditionally published, they can go to the editor and they say, hey, this is exactly where it was. Can we get this fixed? And if it's self-published, then they can go in, make the correction, and then fix it. So be that friend, be a big help. Carla says, what if that friend has published the book already and it is riddled with mistakes? Can they pull the book and have it edited? Carla, is it self-published or did they get it traditionally published? Do you know? Because that does make a little bit of a difference. I mean, not a huge one, but if they have a book published in general, yes, they can pull the book and get it put up with the edited self-published. Okay, yeah. So I actually worked with a client who had self-published her book, and she hadn't had a developmental editor or anything go in and do that. And so what ended up happening was when I came on board and started going through there, I was catching a lot of these things that she had missed. So what she did was she pulled the book off of, I think it was her website, and I think Barnes & Noble's was the other place that was carrying it. So she pulled it off or sold through whatever inventory she already had. And then we went through, oh gosh, we started in March and she just re-released it a couple of weeks ago. And it's gone through several iterations. But you can pull the book off, and if you have people who are waiting for the book, you can let them know, like, hey, by the way, this is being revised with a new edition or an extended. I mean, you just put a fancy name on it if you want. But then you can go in, make those corrections, and then republish the book. So that is possible to do. And if you notice that there are that many issues in it, because there were some fairly big plot holes in this client's book that we had to go in and we had to readjust and kind of fix. And it wasn't just me, it was a couple other editors as well, going through this book with the author to kind of flesh it out. Copy editing was also a part of it. And it does take some time. If they, don't expect it to just be, 2 weeks for a turnaround and then all of a sudden it's back up. Plan. I would recommend for your friend Carla that you, if she hasn't or if they haven't already, get a developmental editor. If it's a storyline issue, if it's big picture story, there's lots of plot holes, the characters are off, they need to get a developmental editor, because a developmental editor is going to help with that. The next thing that they would want to do is they would want to get a copy/line edit. Sometimes you can find editors who will combine both into a single package, and so it helps save them a little bit of money. Again, with the writing blindness, that is a concern that I at least make sure that everyone's aware of. The closer an editor gets to the work, the less likely they are to spot those kinds of things. But if your friend wants to republish the book and have it be polished, then they need to get some editing of some kind. And if they need suggestions, they can go to, I don't have it down in the link. I will add it after this live stream is done. But I run a group called the Edit 10 for Authors on Facebook. And it connects people, authors, to editors and cover designers and web designers. And everyone that is a part of that group, every professional that's on there, offers 10% off to all first-time clients. And so if they're looking for a way to kind of get editing or design or web design or whatever, and they just need some additional help, that would be the way to go. And actually, I think I can post it in the comments. Let me see if I can do that. This will be fun. I haven't done this before. Let's see. Shazam! Okay, that is the Edit 10 group. So if you have an edit and you're looking for an inexpensive way to get connected, I trust every single person on here because I've personally talked with them and they are a part of an editing group that I run on Facebook. So everyone who has gone through that group has agreed to offering 10% off. So follow that link or send that link to your friend Carla. And I think that will help her or help them. I keep saying her. It'll help them a lot. And if you have any other questions about that, please let me know. All right, I'm going to go, excuse me, to the next one. What are some of your writing pet peeves? Let's see, before we're done. So Carla, she wanted to just pull the book and give up. I encouraged her not to, but like your suggestion, yeah, do not let her pull her book completely. Don't do that, because so often we as authors, we love our books. Our books are our babies, and we want to share our babies with the world. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so when we go through and we publish stuff, it's a matter of going, okay, shoot, well, I didn't do it right this time. How can I do it better the next? You got to learn, right? So it's not a matter, don't ever give up on that. I mean, hell, if I had given up on my editing business because it got hard, or if I gave up on live streams because people, I've been told by people, they're like, no one's going to watch the live streams because they're too long. That hasn't been the case, but it would have been discouraging had I listened to them. So don't let her give up. Have her get professional editing, and if she needs help or if she has additional questions, she can, I'm happy to, I do consultations. If you missed the first part, I do 30-minute consultations with people to help kind of get them set up, regardless of whether they go with me or not. Do I want to help every author I can? Absolutely. It's what I love. It's what I do. It's why I started this whole freaking business. But if she just needs some help and some guidance and some suggestions on kind of what to do, have her schedule a time. I'm happy to talk with her. I want to help authors not get discouraged and not get their books out there. My goal is to help every author put their best book forward, especially beginning authors or indie authors. That is where my heart is. That is where my passion lies. That is where I will get on my soapbox all day, every day, and talk about it. So I'm glad that the suggestions were helpful. And I really hope that your friend does not give up on her dream of getting her book published. have her pull it, get it professionally edited, and then put back up. And if they need suggestions or a little bit of help, I have my mentoring. I'm happy to do that. So, gosh, hang on one sec. Water break. All right. Next question was, I forget, what was it? What are some of your writing pet peeves? Echo chambers. Echo chambers for characters. That is probably one of my biggest pet peeves, specifically as an editor, because what ends up happening is that you have two characters. Let's say they're sitting in a restaurant, right? And it's dialogue, 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 dialogue. And then all of a sudden they're walking. And you're like, how did they get, what is happening? Echo chamber. Far too often, an editor or an author will get stuck in this echo chamber with the characters. So all the world fades away for the sake of conversation, mainly because they don't know how to have the conversation and give it just enough details in between there or enough beats in between there to flesh it out. So here's a good example. You have two people talking, they're sitting at a restaurant. There are going to be things going on around them. There's going to be the clattering of plates. There's going to be potentially upset customers yelling. There's going to be, you're going to hear the chefs in the background. There's going to be a hum of activity all around you. And so as you're writing the dialogue between these two people, you need to have those beats, those times where you have a character look and they notice the kid screaming about not wanting to eat his food, or they hear one of the waitresses drop the plates on the floor. You know, that's world building. It is little details of world building, which I think we also talk about world building in one of these other questions. So it'll kind of play off of that. But that is one of my biggest pet peeves as an editor, is that they'll just have straight dialogue. They won't have any dialogue tags. It won't. He said, she said is not a sin. Most people are not going to notice that it's even there. It's one of those invisible sayings that everyone expects to see. So when you don't have it, it's actually more noticeable and it's more frustrating. So don't be afraid to use dialogue tags. Switch it up. If it's he said, she said, he said, she said, yes, that is going to get repetitive. Put he said, she quipped, he replied, they muttered, things like that. Play around with it. Just have a beat. Just like they say something and then, they looked out the window at the cars going by and they're having a thoughtful moment if the scene calls for it. And then you bring them back into the conversation. Little things like that will make a world of difference. One, your editor won't hate you. Two, I don't hate the people that do it, but it is the most common thing that I will comment on in the inline comments that I do when I'm doing a developmental edit is character beat tag, character beat tag, character beat tag, because they need to be there. That's probably my biggest pet peeve. That's the only one that I'm going to go into, because there's so many more. Just avoid that one, and you shall do well, young Padawans. Next one is, what are some tips on knowing when to hold back world building for further installments of an epic fantasy book series? Okay. I have a 12-book fantasy series planned. Why I put this on myself, I do not know. I have, what is it? Write a series-itis. And it's a terminal illness where I'm forced to write series, and it's because I get into the world building and I keep adding stuff to it. So you have to think about your series as a whole. So I have 12 books. What do I want to reveal in each book about the world? Specifically looking at the first trilogy. Now there are aspects that I introduce in the first book, such as creatures, fantastical creatures, creatures that you're just like, oh my sweet Lord, I'd never want to come in contact with one of those. So I set a expectation for a reader that there is going to be crazy critters out there in the world that these characters are going to run into. What I don't do is say, here's all of the creatures in all of the world. I don't do that. I want to reveal it strategically over the course of the trilogy. So I have a sea monster planned, thanks to my son's first grade drawing, that I was like, oh, there's the third book. And I was like, oh, crap. So now I have a sea monster that will be like a giant squid-ish, probably somewhat more terrifying, maybe tons of eyes and stuff. That's going to be in the third book. So I don't reveal anything about it until the third book. Some of the magic system, I'm not going to reveal in the third book or in the first book. It's going to be revealed in subsequent books. The way magic works will be revealed later into some of the books. How civilizations have come and gone are going to be spread throughout the books. The first book, you want to lay the foundation for the world building. You want to make it feel big. So I have 5 kingdoms in my fantasy story that you know about at the very beginning. You know that there was an ancient race of snake people that disappeared. No one knows why. They just disappeared. You have an ancient, not entirely ancient. They're not as old as the snake people, but there is a race of people who they have a long lifespan, but we know very little about them. More of their history will be revealed as time goes on. I have 3 continents. Hold that thought. Keep holding it. Okay. I'm gonna see my mad map drawings. Let's see if I can actually hold it up. So I have 3 major continents in my world. Oops. I have 3 major continents in my world. And essentially each series is going to take place, or each of the 3 trilogies is going to take, is it 3 trilogies? How many trilogies do I have? I have 4 trilogies. My gosh. Yeah, I don't know why I do this to myself. But I have 4 trilogies and that will be spread across 4 trilogies, 3 continents. That is what I'm trying to say. I swear I speak English at least half the time. And so you're going to hear rumors in the first book of the continent that is going to come into play in the 3rd trilogy. And 3rd and 4th trilogy will both take place on the same continent, which will be the 3rd one. So basically, the farther east you go, the longer it's going to, or the more important it will be. So I lay the foundations for making the world feel big, but I don't say, hey, there's all these cool things over here, because it's just going to distract the reader, because they're going to be like, but you told us about all the cool things that's over on these continents. Why are we not talking about them now? And the middle continent is basically ruled by dragons, because dragons are cool and they need to be in the story. And it's kind of how I originally started this whole this whole madness off. So you hear rumors about it through this initial trilogy and in the first book, but I never give you concrete answers as to what it is. And so that is a great way to expand on it. You drop hints, you drop intrigue, you drop little breadcrumbs that lead you to a much bigger world. You create lore and a history. It doesn't need to be as detailed. Let's put it this way. You don't need to have Tolkien level history for your fantasy novel. Because you could take Tolkien and teach an entire world history class on his world. That is not what you need to go for. That is not anywhere near what I've tried to do. But because I've been world building for like 13 years on this freaking thing, it's fairly in-depth. But you don't have to have it be that. You have to make it feel that way. And so little details make it feel bigger. Remember that. Little details, the way that the culture works, the types of food that they eat, the stories that they tell, those little things make a world feel bigger than it really is. So keep that in mind. That is how you expand on it. Throw over the, that's how you expand and hold back, is you don't reveal everything in the first one. You look at it and be like, what do I want to set up for later trilogies or later books in the series? What rumors or little side things can I throw in that fit that will come into play later on? That is how you do it. Okay. Next question was, is it easier or harder to get a book published these days than before the growth of the internet? It is by far easier to get your book published because people are in control of publishing. I mean, unless you're going the traditional publishing route, self-publishing is as easy, doesn't mean it's right, as easy as write first draft, throw something together on Canva for a cover, put it on Amazon. That's it. That's all you have to do. So it's incredibly easy in that sense. It is not by any means free to self-publish if you want to do it right. It's going to cost you money for an editor. It's going to cost you money for a graphic designer to design something, because like it or not, people judge a book by its cover, and you need to spend time understanding the market. Doesn't mean that you write to market. You can. It's not what I do. It's not what I recommend even for my clients. Shouldn't write specifically to market, because there is always going to be a niche market that you can fit into. The trick is just finding it. Now, with traditional publishing, here's the sticky thing that people run into that they aren't aware of. When you post your story on forums or on platforms like why can I not say this? Archive of Our Own, fanfiction.net, or Wattpad, you use what's called first rights, which means that you've used up the one thing that the publisher wants, a traditional publisher wants. They want first rights. So when you've used that up, it doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it can be more challenging to get a traditional publisher to then take your book because you've used it. It's out there in the world. Now, an example of this is a friend of mine, Verity Buchanan. She posted The Journey on Wattpad, and I just got this yesterday. I'm so excited. She just got this book published at the beginning of last month. She had this up on Wattpad, so she had technically used first rights. She was still able to find a small publisher, not a huge. It's not like Tor or Penguin or Random House or whatever, but she found a small publisher who was willing to take it and was still willing to publish it. And first draft to second draft and editing and stuff, there were things that changed. If you change it up enough, then it doesn't reinstall first rights, but it makes it just different enough where they might be interested in doing it. So that is something to be aware of when you're doing that. Don't rush into publishing just because it's easier now than ever. You can become an Amazon bestseller in 5 minutes, but it doesn't mean anything. great example of this. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on a previous live stream. A guy took and this is up on YouTube. A guy took a picture of his left foot, put it on the cover, put the author's name as left foot. The title of the book was Putting Your Foot Down, or Putting My Foot Down. It was dedicated to right foot, if I remember correctly. It was up, he put it up, it had like 3 pages in there, uploaded it to Amazon. Amazon didn't do anything with it, didn't flag it, didn't do anything. Published it, sold it for $5, had 5 of his friends go and do it within 10 minutes, his book, and chose some obscure category. And it was the #1 best-selling book in those categories within 10 minutes. That's how easy it is to become an Amazon bestseller. So when you say, I'm an Amazon bestseller, guess what? It doesn't mean squat. Doesn't mean anything, because anybody can do it. Now, if you're a New York Times bestseller, or you're on a list where it's actually much harder to get onto because you actually have to earn it, then yeah, then you have a little bit more bragging rights as far as I'm concerned. But if you came to me and said like, hey, I'm an Amazon bestseller, I'm going to give you a golf clap, and that's about it. Because anybody can become an Amazon bestseller if they scam Amazon in the right way, and they hack the algorithms and all that kind of stuff. So while it's easier, it doesn't necessarily mean that your book is good, or that your book is polished, or that your book is going to sell. So don't think that just because it's easier than ever to get a book published, that it's actually going to work for you. You have to work your butt off to put forward a good book that is well-rounded, good plot, good story, good characters, good motivations, and market it to your target audience. And then if you're fighting against a lot of other authors in that same category, and you're not trying to scam Amazon's system or the algorithm, then yes, you've earned it. So that's my word of advice to you. Yes, it is easier than ever to publish a book, because it's as simple as writing something crappy, putting it on Amazon with a Photoshop cover, and hacking the algorithm. It's as simple as that. But if you want to actually do it right, which the vast majority of authors want to do, they don't want to be lumped into the category of indie authors who don't give a crap about the reader. They're going to work their butts off to do it. And I know that you are probably going to fall into that camp of working your butt off to do it. All right, next question here. When you start to write a book, do you structure the rough outline completely, or do you come up with headers and wing it? Do you come up with a structure and follow each chapter before you start? The answer would be no, no, and no. I've seen people who will write 10 to 15,000 words of an outline before they even start writing the book. And I'm just like, why? To me, this is my own opinion, it's a waste of time. It is a huge waste of time, because you know what normally happens? People start writing, something changes, and then everything past that point goes and drifts off into nothingness. That's what happens. And that is why you see so many people, so many authors, because I tested this. I tested this on Twitter. I used my Twitter followers as guinea pigs, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I asked them, what is the hardest part that they find about writing? And almost every, because I had an idea of why that was, based off a writing class that I did. And while there were some people who were like, I have a hard time with knowing how to start it, or I have a hard time knowing how to end it, the vast majority of them fell in the middle. They don't know what to write in the middle. And my theory with that is it is actually because they have spent so much time outlining it that there is no longer any sense of adventure in writing the story because you already know what happens. It's already there. So you've already spent hours and hours compiling tens of thousands of words for an outline that could be a book in and of itself. And now the excitement's gone. Now it's just like, okay, now I read it. This isn't all authors, but it was interesting to see how many of them fell into the category. And when I asked them, what type of outlining do you do? Do you pants it or do you do a hard outline? Every single one of them said that they do a hard outline. Every single one of them said, I write out an outline before I start. And they were the ones that had struggled. The ones that pants, they were the ones having a harder time with the beginning and the end. The middle part wasn't an issue. For me, middle part, not an issue. That is where the most fun happens. I have a harder time starting. By the way, the cheater way to start a story, start off with an action that raises a question. The first chapter of my book, it says, Trinia ran through the streets of the city trying to get away. The fate of her people depended on it. Now, if you read that, you're going to be going, why is she running? It's obviously something bad. And why in the world is the fate of her people on it? So I've hooked you right then and there. The book isn't a thriller. The book is fantasy. But I've started with an action that raises a question that hooks the reader, and now they go, crap. Now I have to find out why she's running. And more importantly, why she's running from her dad. Now I have to know these things. Otherwise, I will not be able to sleep at night. So there's a little mind hack for you guys. And in an ending, you want to wrap up 3/4 of the minor plot threads while leaving the main plot thread still open-ended a little bit. So that way you have a satisfying first book that the reader can go, okay, this was good. It didn't leave me off on all of these cliffhangers where I'm going to be overwhelmed and just never pick up a book again because I hate the author so much. I feel good. Oh man, but that cliffhanger, it got me. And now I'm invested. I have to wait. We wrapped up everything. So there's some little hacks for you. But the middle part that's where all of the fun is. So you see the worksheet behind me. Those are the worksheets. That's volume 1 of my worksheets. So there's 6 worksheets in there, 3 of which you get when you sign up for a consultation with me. And it comes with the brainstorming, outlining, and character creation. But with the outlining, I do milestones. So you write you draw a horizontal line, you have your beginning, middle, and an end. And if you're familiar with any of my live streams, you know what I'm talking about already. And you draw those big tick marks there, beginning, middle, end. Well, I always get confused as which way my hands are actually going to go as I'm saying it when you guys are watching it. And then you write how you want it to start, where the middle part takes place, if you have an idea of it, and then where you want to end it. And then you draw little alternating tick marks on the line. Those are the big events. Those are the big things that you envision for your story, the way that you want to take the story. And then everything in between there is an adventure. It is up to you, your imagination, and all of the crazy stuff that you can come up with. That is how I wrote my book. I knew where I wanted to start. I knew how I wanted to end it. I wasn't quite sure about the middle part, so I didn't worry about it. I just started writing, and I knew that I wanted to kind of touch on these things. Well, specifically during this second draft. The first draft, I pantsed the whole thing. I had no idea what was happening. And that was half the fun, was that I could go on all of these side adventures, these character building adventures, and it was entertaining, it was engaging, at least for me. I mean, most of my readers who got to kind of beta read the first draft, they thought it was interesting and fun. That is a way to avoid that middle section where you just like, I don't know what I want to write. It's not fun anymore. It's because you've planned it out. Some people are able to do that. The vast majority of authors that I know and work with don't fall into those categories. The milestones, even pantsers, the adorable author who has done, who was gracious enough to do a review of my worksheets. She's a hardcore pantser. It got her to do it because it leaves it flexible enough. It gives you enough of an outline to go, okay, I know beginning, middle, and end, and all the big events in between. And all the other stuff is up to my imagination and what I want to do. As long as I'm moving consistently towards those big events, I'm good. I'm good. So that is how you do that. That is how you get a rough outline down. It's not an outline, it's a milestone. I call it the milestone method. It's not a snowflake, and it's not, you know, the synopsis or the table of contents. It's, you have a milestone. You're working in a linear fashion. Even if you don't write linear, if you write those big events, totally fine. But it moves you progressively forward. It doesn't move you down, it doesn't move you up, it doesn't move you diagonal, it moves you forward through the book. So that is what I recommend that you do there. All right, we have 10 minutes and 4 questions left. Is there a tool for writers that will force me to write a certain amount of words each day? That tool is called self-discipline, my friend. Know it, live it, love it. No, there is no tool that's going to force you to write a certain amount of words a day. It really comes down to being disciplined about it. And the big thing is, and here's a writing pet peeve for you. I knew there was more. Not everyone can write every day. That's just realistic. What you should be more concerned with and more focused on is writing consistently. Same time every week, you schedule writing, if that's the only time that you have available to write. Because if you're like me, you hate leaving off in the middle of a chapter, because by the time you come back, you have to reread the chapter and remember where you were, and your whole thought process is gone. It's just kind of depressing, is what it is. So write consistently. Develop a writing process. I created a series on how to start a writing process. It's you be consistent. You schedule time. You put it on Google Calendars or whatever app that you have, and you mark it down same day every week, so that way you know exactly, I have an hour to write. So I'm going to write as much as I can in this hour, and then I'm going to be done. Or maybe you have 2 hours. I'm going to write 2 hours, and then I'm done. That is how you build consistently. That's how you build self-discipline. That's how you start to build a writing process that you can fall back on again and again and again and again. And when you have a writing process to fall back on, it doesn't matter how you feel that particular day. You'll be able to sit down and know with confidence that you can sit down and write. You can write a chapter, 2,500 words. That age range, oh my gosh, that word count range is the perfect range for a first draft chapter. So start there, write out that much, and then be done. Write a chapter each week, each day, every 2 days, doesn't matter, be consistent. Okay. Are novelists very disciplined about their job, like having a start and stop time, a number of pages each day? As I was thinking about this question, I started laughing manically and kind of curled up in the fetal position for a minute, because the answer is no. I mean, in large part, like, unless you've developed a writing process like I have, most people don't. They write when the muse hits them. And honestly, the muse is a fickle bee. She just shows up whenever she wants, and she usually brings you a new story idea every time she shows up. So she's kind of useless. Just being honest, the muse is useless. because she's not actually very helpful. If you want to be disciplined, if you want to take writing seriously, you have to, without a doubt, create a writing process that works for you. That is one of the things that I help my clients do with the mentoring thing that I do. I actually, before we even get to their story, most of them are like, hey, so I got this story. I'm like, mm-mm. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Mm-mm. I'm like, mm-mm. We're not even touching the story until we have built a foundation and a writing process for you to fall back on again and again and again. And once you've gotten that done and you're consistent in that, we'll talk about your story. And every single one of them who has done it and has implemented it has found that not only has their productivity increased, but they're able to write faster than ever before because they know exactly what they have to do and they've become disciplined about it. Beforehand, they didn't have the discipline. I didn't have the discipline. I'll be honest with you. I still struggle with the discipline, but I know that I have a writing process. So when I do sit down and I write my story and I'm writing out a chapter, I can kick butt while I do it because I know exactly what I have to do and I am disciplined about it. So if you have a writing process and you want to be an author, a serious author, not aspiring, not saying, I wish someday for it to happen, you have to have a plan. You have to have something to implement. And when you've implemented it, it will be successful. And just as a side note, what I teach my students and my clients, I give them the template. I tell them, this is how I've done it. Here's the basic template. Now take it and figure out how to implement it in your life because it's your writing process, not mine. I've built mine for me, but the base template helps them figure out how to make their own. And that is what is powerful about it. It's because it's not mine. It becomes theirs. And when it becomes theirs, they own it. And when they own it, they're disciplined about it and they can be consistent in it. All right, so 3 minutes, 2 more questions. We are kicking butt here today. And if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. And if you haven't already, subscribe because, hey, I'm fun. I mean, I rant most of the time, but if you enjoy my rantings, make sure you subscribe. So next question. What are 5 of the most important things to check when trying to improve your own writing? Okay. Flow, pacing, 2 of the biggest ones. And that comes with knowing proper punctuation and knowing proper spelling and knowing proper grammar. Now, the caveat here, I'm not a copy editor. I'm not a line editor. I could not do those people's jobs on a professional level because it would drive me insane. What I can do, however, is I can see if something's wrong because I've read. Do you see how many books I have? I've read a lot of books. I haven't read all of these, but I've read the vast majority of them. And you know what I've learned? I've learned how to properly say things in a book. I know how to structure sentences because I've learned by reading. So if you want to improve your writing, read a lot in your genre, out of your genre, fiction, nonfiction, maybe not the esoteric stuff because I don't understand that. And most of them don't care about the readers anyway. This is a blanket statement. If you're an esoteric reader, I'm not talking about you. But those are the top 2 things that I would say if you want to check while writing, that is going to impede the flow and the pace of your story. And if those are blocked, everything else is going to have an issue. I kid you not, with the amount of editing that I've done in this past year for clients and for students through the mentoring process, every single one of them, they will get more comments about choppy sentences and lack of flow and pacing. Great. Those are the top 3 things. Top 3 things that I will comment on. And so you need to know. Now, if you need help with that and you want to learn how to do that, the free version of Grammarly can help. It's not a fix-all. Please understand, it is not a fix-all. But what it does is that it tells you why something is wrong. And then once you've gotten to the point where you understand it enough, you'll be able to tell whether it's accurate or not. I've been using Grammarly for over 2 years. It's checked almost 3 million words. My words, other words, all sorts of words. And what I have learned through Grammarly, I've used the premium version mainly because it was for punctuation. Punctuation is now included in the free version of Grammarly, which is nice, which is why I'm getting rid of the premium, because I'm tired of paying $140 a year for it. If you want to know more, check out my Grammarly versus Pro Writing Aid video. You can see I'm very good at promoting myself. Sidetracked. If you want to know, because it tells you exactly what's wrong or why something is inaccurate or why you need a certain punctuation mark, where after the introductory clause, it yells at me constantly. It still yells at me for not having punctuation at the comma at the introductory clause. Do you know how much I remember from school? This much. I remember this much. My son explained to me the other day what a compound word is. But the thing is I know what it is because I've seen it. I write it. It's ingrained in me because I did learn it at one time, but it's so second nature that I don't even think about it anymore. And for authors, we tend to do that. We get so comfortable with these things that we've learned that we don't think about it. And so when it pops up, like comma after an introductory clause, I couldn't have just told you that, which is why I'm not a copy editor and a line editor. I couldn't tell you what it meant, but I see how it works. And over time, I've relearned a lot of this stuff because it was second nature to me. I didn't have to think about it. And as writers, we tend to not think about those things as much while we're actually writing. And why should we? We're just trying to get the freaking story out. But when it comes time for editing, suddenly we have to remember all that stuff because we have to make it work. We have to make it legible. We have to make it flow. And that's one of the things of when I started getting into the editing, I had to relearn a lot of these small things that were second nature to me. I would do most of them, but as I did it and got into editing, I realized, holy crap, this is so important. Most editors or most authors don't do this. They don't think about it till the second, third, maybe fourth draft. But if you can do it in the first draft without slowing yourself down, which is why I recommend using Grammarly or even Pro Writing Aid if you wanted to, but Grammarly is free and the free version will help you immensely in this, then that would be the way to go because it teaches you the importance of doing it. So what ends up happening is you have a cleaner first draft. So when you do get professional editing, which if you're doing self-publishing, you need to do, it's going to be cleaner. And if it's a cleaner manuscript and there's less work required, you're going to get charged less. Because trust me, I run a group for editors. More often than not, when they have someone send them a manuscript that looked like it got mauled by some sort of rabid wombat, they go, this is going to be more work. I have to charge more because it takes more time. If you want to pay less, cleaner first draft. Learn how these things work. Get a free tool like Grammarly and create a cleaner first draft. That is going to help you so much. You don't have to know everything that an editor needs to know in order to write well. What you need to know is you need to have good pacing and good flow. I'm not going to go into 5 because top 2, those are the top 2 things that I've seen in every single edit that I have done since I started doing this in February. Every book that I've done had a pacing and flow issue in some area. And all it boiled down to was punctuation. It largely boiled down to punctuation. Because if you don't have those beats, those specific things, it's either going to be a run-on sentence or it's going to be a choppy sentence, and it messes with the entire story. Authors don't think this way, in large respect. Because if it was, I wouldn't have. If it wasn't common, I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't have the pacing and flow issues in almost every single story. So if you want to check your own writing, get Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid, or even just check them out and see what they could do for you. Either way, and I'm a proponent of it because I use them daily. I use them, but understanding where those things go and how you can use those things to help the flow or manage the flow or create a very specific feeling is so powerful. Trust me, your writing will improve tenfold once you've understood those concepts of pace and flow and how it relates to the punctuation and how you use it. Guys, your minds will just go, and you'll pay less. Usually, on average, you'll pay less because there's going to be less work for an editor when you do a copy or line edit, even a proofread. If it's cleaner, you're going to pay a little bit less overall, because if it's a mess and it's been attacked by an angry wombat, you're going to pay more because the editor is going to have to work harder to fix everything. So be understanding that. All right, a little bit over. Going to wrap up this last question. What is the hardest part of the story to write? It is the middle part. By and large, it is the middle part for almost every single author that I have encountered. The majority of them struggle with that, which we've already talked about, so I won't go into it a whole lot. But if you struggle with the middle part, and if you have an outline, throw it out. I know, sacrilege, but throw it out. Take what you had, look at the big events that were supposed to take place, not the minutiae little detail, not those, don't do those. Look at the big events, mark those down on a timeline, and then write something new. Just completely change it. As long as you're following those big events, it's not going to matter what you do. If you're in one city and you're like, well, you know what? I want the city to be attacked. That's not how it was before, but I'm going to do it because I want to see what happens. Ask yourself, what if? What if this were to happen? What if that were to happen? What if the characters did this? What if this happened to a character? And when you start asking those questions, suddenly you want to explore those questions. And as you explore those questions, you'll find out things about your characters that you didn't even know were there, and you're the one who created them. That is why it is so much fun to write the middle part using the milestone method, because everything is the adventure. Nothing is set in stone. The only things that are actually set in stone are your beginning and your end. The middle part, where you kind of make that turn, where it escalates and leads it towards the ending, that is flexible. It's still going to take place in the middle of the story, obviously. But how you get there will be different if you're using the milestone method and if you've been using a very rigid outline. Now, I know for those of you who have spent a lot of time and a lot of tears creating thousands of words worth of an outline, that will be extremely painful. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you burn them or delete them. Don't do that. Look at the big events and spread them out in a timeline. And then in between, you can still use those things. You can still use them. But look at them in a different light. Don't see them as something that you have to do, because the milestones can be changed. If you write something that's on this milestone and you're working towards this one, but somewhere in the middle, something happens that means that this has now changed, which then changes everything. Before, that's when writers go, screw it, I'm done. I'm not going to write it anymore, because I now have to throw away the rest of my outline, and I've spent hours working on it. I don't want to spend another 5 hours working on another outline. You don't have to. You look at, okay, what big events will be the consequences for this action, and you go boom, 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 end. See the difference? See how much easier it is? Because then as you go, something else might change. And then you might be 2 milestones away from the ending, and you're like, oh crap, what do I do? If it's either you throw away everything that you've written back to a certain point, or you change the milestones that still lead you towards the ending based on where you're at. It's like magic. That is the beauty of the milestone method, is that it can change, and it doesn't require you to throw away everything that you've worked for and worked very, very hard on between those points. Because if you start back here and you're like, oh, we changed, and then you write to this point and then it changes again, do you throw away everything in between that? No. You change the next milestone. You change the next big event that needs to take place in order for you to get to the end. You change that so that way it still gets you to that ending point that you have chosen. And maybe you choose a different ending. It depends. Like I have a different ending than I did in my first draft, based on the fact that I didn't have a plot in the first draft, and I have one now in the second one. So I have changed my ending a little bit. And so the milestones that take me there are going to be a little bit different. But if it changes, I simply rearrange the milestones. It is as simple as that. So, guys, writing is an adventure. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting and engaging for you and the reader. So have fun writing. Go on adventures. Do those, I just said them, good Lord. Milestones. Do the milestones. Try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's okay. Experiment with different things. Don't feel like, well, I've only done it this way and I've learned how to do it this way, and therefore I have to do it this way because everybody does it this way, and everybody who writes a book says I have to do it this way, and Stephen King says I have to do it this way, and J.K. Rowling says I have to do it this way. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. The best piece of writing advice that I got, I think I mentioned this on another one, is that someone out there is always going to be a better author than I am. That was the best writing advice that I have ever received. Why? Because it means that I don't have to be like them. I get to be me. You get to be you. You get to write how you enjoy writing. You can be inspired by those other authors, but you do not have to be those other authors. You do not have to write like those other authors. I don't write like Tolkien, but I am inspired by the world building and the depths and the beauty of his world building. I'm inspired by that. And I will take that and apply it in a way that makes sense to me. With your favorite author, no matter who it is, if you have somebody that you look up to them. Do not put them on a pedestal, because there's someone out there who's better at writing than they are. And I'm a better writer than people who are just starting off, because I've simply had more practice. I've had more time to hone my craft. And just like you're going to be better than someone else. But here's the thing. If you write the way that you were supposed to be writing, the way that you were designed to write, then when you finish your book, think about this for a second. You will become someone's inspiration. I've said this before, and I will say it again. You will become someone's inspiration. That means if you want to make a living off of writing, you cannot afford to put shitty books out, because someone is going to be inspired by that shitty book and they're going to write more shitty books. That's how that works. You want to put your best book forward. That doesn't mean it's perfect. It just means that you've done your best to write the book that you wanted to write, not trying to be like anyone else other than yourself, because someone is always going to be better at writing than you are. You doing you writing the way that your author voice dictates that you write, by experimenting, by challenging yourself, you will put out books that will inspire other authors who will start off as readers, who maybe even be fans. And they'll be like, wow, this person did it, and I loved their writing. I want to do that. And then they will start writing. And I would encourage you to tell them the exact same thing that I'm telling you now, is that don't be like me. Don't write like me. Take what feels right and find you. Because your book someday is going to do what my book did for you, and your book is going to inspire somebody else. That is a mind-blowing thought. And you may feel a lot of pressure. It's a privilege. And I've gone way over my time. And I appreciate you guys for sticking around for this. But this is so important. So, so important. Your book someday is going to inspire someone else. So it is your responsibility to write the way that you were designed to write, not like someone else. That's called fan fiction. All right. If you're writing like someone else and it's a copycat, it's fan fiction. If you take from them and glean from them how they do things, which we should do as authors. I've read a lot of Tolkien, and I've read a lot of Frank Herbert, and I've read a lot of, who's that? Ted Dekker. They each have something different. Herbert has political plots. Tolkien, epic fantasy world building. Dekker, thriller, like psychological thriller, like pacings. Brian Davis, Brian Davis. He's got different character developments and stuff. Take from those authors, glean from them what elements that you want to incorporate into your stories, and then play around with them. All right. That's all I'm going to say about it. I appreciate you guys for sticking around for all of my rantings and ramblings. If you, again, if you haven't already, check out the links below. If you want to have a consultation with me about your book, and if you're interested in either the mentoring or developmental editing. If you want to check out Pro Writing Aid or Grammarly, links are down below. I also have some other tools like Xmind 8, fantastic mind mapping tool if you want to lay out a milestone. Every single one of my clients, my coaching clients and students have used it, and it's helped them tremendously because it's fabulous. And WriteTrack, another really awesome tool to use, helps you track your word count and your specific goals. Cannot recommend it enough. Yeah. And if you like my rantings and ramblings, subscribe. Hit the little bell so that way you get notified. I release lots of videos. I do the live streams where I answer questions. And if you have any questions, comment down below and let me know, or shoot me an email. And I'll answer it on whatever the next live stream is. I don't even know what day it is anymore. But I will do that. Thank you guys again. I cannot begin to tell you just how much I appreciate all of you and the support that you guys have for this channel. You guys are why I do this. And so thank you. And I will see you guys next time. Take care.